The evening breeze carried the smell of roasted corn from a nearby stall, and voices from children playing drifted through the narrow paths of the village. Among them was Adiz, a young woman whose life had always been quiet, simple, and without any spotlight. She was the daughter of a farmer, known for her gentle smile and her ability to work tirelessly without complaint. People in the village greeted her with fondness, but no one ever imagined her life would stretch beyond the dusty roads and the thatched huts she had always known. Her mornings began before the rooster crowed, drawing water from the stream and helping her mother prepare food. By midday, she was already at the farm with her father, planting, weeding, and carrying baskets that were sometimes heavier than her own frame. Yet, even in those moments, there was a lightness about her. She found joy in the little things, helping her younger siblings braid their hair, listening to stories told by elders under the moonlight, and humming songs that made her feel close to something greater than the life she knew. In the same country but a world apart from her village, there was Prince Obinna. His life was wrapped in luxury, power, and influence. Heir to an empire of businesses spread across continents, he was known for his intelligence, his charm, and the air of command that followed him everywhere. Yet, his heart was often restless. Surrounded by wealth and privilege, he longed for something real, something pure that was untouched by the gold and glitter that surrounded him. His advisors whispered of mergers, alliances, and marriages that would strengthen his empire, but his soul yearned for a different kind of connection. Fate began to stir quietly. A grand festival was announced in the city, an event that would draw villagers, traders, dignitaries, and even royals. It was a celebration of culture, music, and unity, one that promised laughter, dancing, and colors that would brighten the night. Adiz had never left her village, but when her best friend Ngozi convinced her to come along, she hesitated only for a moment. The thought of seeing the city's wonders excited her, though her heart was nervous about stepping into a place so different from the earth and streams she knew. That night, Adiz braided her hair neatly and wrapped a scarf her mother had given her. She wore a simple dress that carried the faint scent of soap, nothing extraordinary, but it held the warmth of her family's love. The journey was long, the road winding and full of voices and chatter from others heading to the festival. The city rose ahead like a dream, with lights shining brighter than the stars. Her eyes widened as she stepped into the crowd, absorbing everything. The drummers beating rhythms that made hearts race, the dancers swaying with beauty, the smell of spices mixing in the air, and the laughter that seemed to carry into the night sky. Among the crowd, destiny quietly moved. Prince Obinna arrived at the festival with his entourage, his presence commanding attention without effort. People turned, bowing slightly, whispering his name as he walked past. Yet, his eyes did not linger on the wealthy guests or the elaborate performances arranged for him. For a brief moment, his gaze shifted, scanning the faces in the crowd until it fell on someone he had never seen before. Adiz, standing near the lanterns, unaware of the attention she had drawn, looked almost out of place yet more radiant than anyone else in his eyes. Her laughter, soft and unpretentious, reached him. It wasn't the polished laugh of women he had met at high gatherings, but one that carried honesty and freedom. Something stirred in him as he watched her point out a dancer to her friend, her eyes sparkling with delight. For the first time in a long while, the prince felt his world slow down. He didn't approach her yet. Not when the night was filled with eyes watching him. But deep inside, he knew the festival had given him more than he had expected. And Adiz, unaware of the gaze that had found her, continued to enjoy the night, never knowing that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. The music grew louder, the drums echoing across the ground, while two hearts, one from a small village and the other from a golden palace, had already begun their journey toward each other without even a single word spoken. The night of the festival ended with laughter echoing through the air and lanterns glowing until dawn. Adiz returned to her village with her friend Ngozi, her mind still swirling with memories of the dazzling sights. She carried no treasure from the city, but she felt something had shifted inside her. She could not explain it, an unshakable feeling, as though invisible threads had been tied around her heart, pulling her toward something she didn't yet understand. The following days in the village were ordinary on the surface. Adiz rose before the first bird sang, fetched water with her clay pot balanced carefully on her head, and followed her father to the farm. But her thoughts often wandered. She found herself replaying flashes of the festival. The music, the crowd, the lights. At times, she caught herself smiling without realizing. Ngozi teased her about it. "You've been daydreaming too much, Adiz," Ngozi said one afternoon as they sat by the stream washing clothes. "Don't tell me you left your heart in that city." Adiz laughed and shook her head. "My heart? In that crowd?" "Ngozi, stop your teasing. I was only amazed by what I saw. Nothing more." But deep inside, she knew it wasn't just the lights or the music. Something else had stayed with her, though she couldn't name it. In the city, Prince Obinna was equally restless. He had attended many gatherings before, surrounded by wealthy men and women dressed in their finest clothes. He had smiled politely at them, made speeches that impressed them, but afterward, he often felt drained. The festival was different. He remembered the girl by the lanterns, the one who laughed freely without trying to impress anyone. He had not even heard her name, yet her image lingered like a shadow in his mind. One evening, while sitting on the balcony of his father's estate, the prince tried to distract himself with documents laid before him. Business proposals, letters, and invitations filled the table, but his eyes refused to focus. His mind drifted back to the lantern-lit night. He found himself whispering, "Who are you?" as though the wind might carry the answer to him. Weeks passed, and the festival slowly became a memory to others, but not to Obinna. Determined to find the girl, he began to ask quiet questions. He sent trusted aides to trace the origins of the villagers who had attended. Most who heard his inquiries assumed he was interested in trade or charity projects. No one imagined he was searching for a face he could not forget. Meanwhile, in Adiz's village, life pressed on. The harvest season was drawing near, and her family's hands were full. Adiz bent under the sun, her hands pulling weeds, her back aching from long hours, yet her spirit remained calm. But sometimes when she paused to wipe sweat from her forehead, a strange thought would drift into her mind. Could someone as great as a prince ever notice a village girl like her? She would laugh at herself for such an idea. It was too far-fetched, too much like the tales told under the moonlight. One afternoon, while Adiz was at the market selling groundnuts, a convoy of sleek black cars rolled slowly into the dusty town square. The hum of their engines drew everyone's attention. Traders stopped mid-call, children ran closer to look, and whispers filled the air. From one of the cars stepped tall men in suits, their presence commanding, their eyes scanning the crowd. Behind them came a figure dressed simply compared to his guards, but his aura spoke volumes. It was Prince Obinna. The market seemed to freeze. People bowed their heads, murmuring in surprise. Adiz stood still, her tray of groundnuts balanced on her lap. She had never seen him this close before. His presence felt like the sun had suddenly stepped into the marketplace. She quickly looked away, afraid of appearing rude, her heart pounding hard. Prince Obinna's eyes moved carefully across the crowd. He had been told the girl he sought was from this village. His gaze swept past traders, elders, and children until it rested on Adiz. His chest tightened. It was her. She looked even more striking in her simplicity than she had under the lanterns. Their eyes met briefly, and Adiz felt a strange warmth run through her. She looked down at once, embarrassed, unsure why a man like that would look at her. Obinna, however, felt a certainty settle in him. This was no accident. Fate had led him here. He didn't approach her immediately. Instead, he spoke with the village chief, greeting the people warmly, offering words of encouragement, and promising support for their community. His voice carried power yet kindness. The villagers cheered, grateful for his attention, but his mind remained on Adiz. That evening, as the prince prepared to leave, he turned once more toward the marketplace. Adiz was no longer there. She had gone home, shaken by the encounter. She replayed the moment endlessly, his eyes meeting hers, the silence between them, and the way her heart raced like never before. At the palace later that night, Obinna gave instructions quietly. "Find out her name," he told his aide. "The girl who sold groundnuts in the marketplace today. I must know her." Back in the village, Adiz sat under the moonlight with her mother, shelling beans. Her mother noticed how quiet she was and asked, "What troubles you, my child?" Adiz hesitated before replying, "Mama, do you think life can change suddenly, without warning?" Her mother smiled softly. "Life is full of surprises, Adiz. Sometimes, what is meant for us will find us, no matter where we are." Adiz nodded, but her heart beat faster, as if the future had already begun to stir around her. Unseen by her, the prince's search had already narrowed to her doorstep. The threads of destiny were tightening, pulling two lives closer. What began as a single glance under festival lanterns was about to grow into something neither the village girl nor the prince could have imagined. The sun rose gently over Adiz's village, painting the huts and farmlands in warm light. Life carried on in its familiar rhythm, but for Adiz, nothing felt quite the same. Since the day the prince visited the marketplace, her heart had been restless. She tried to shake the memory of his eyes meeting hers, but it clung to her like a secret she couldn't share. She told herself it meant nothing. He was a prince, after all, and she was just a farmer's daughter. Yet, something deep within her whispered otherwise. Across the miles, Prince Obinna sat in his study, restless as well. His aide had returned with information. "Her name is Adiz," the man reported, "daughter of a farmer, known in her village for her kindness and hard work. Nothing else remarkable." "Nothing remarkable," Obinna repeated, his lips curving slightly. "You don't see what I see. Sometimes the most extraordinary things are hidden in simplicity." That night, Obinna stood by his window, gazing at the city lights, thinking of the small village where Adiz lived. He could send for her, summon her to the palace with the power of his name. But that didn't feel right. He wanted her to know him not as a prince with riches and guards, but as a man who truly saw her. Days turned into weeks, and whispers began to stir in Adiz's village. The prince's unexpected visit had left tongues wagging. Some said he came for political reasons. Others insisted he had his eyes on business opportunities. No one suspected the true reason. Except Ngozi, who watched her friend with sharp eyes. "Adiz," Ngozi teased one evening as they walked home from the stream, "I saw the way the prince looked at you in the market. Don't even try to deny it. His eyes followed you like bees to honey." Adiz laughed nervously, brushing it off. "Ngozi, stop this talk. How can a prince notice me? Out of all the women in this world. It was nothing." But Ngozi wasn't convinced. "We'll see," she said, her smile playful yet certain. Meanwhile, Obinna devised a plan. He disguised himself one afternoon, wearing plain clothes with only one loyal guard at a distance. He traveled quietly to Adiz's village, determined to see her without the weight of his title. As he walked through the narrow paths, children ran past him. Women greeted him kindly, not recognizing who he was. It was a rare freedom he hadn't felt in years. He found her near the stream, kneeling as she washed cassava roots. The sound of water splashing mixed with her humming, a melody so soft and genuine it made him pause. She hadn't noticed him yet, her focus fixed on her task. Obinna felt a strange humility in that moment. This was not the world of chandeliers and gold he had always known, yet it held more beauty than any palace hall. He stepped closer and greeted her, his voice calm. "Good afternoon." Startled, Adiz looked up, her eyes wide. For a moment she thought she was mistaken. Was this truly him, here by the stream, dressed like an ordinary man? She stood quickly, wiping her hands nervously on her wrapper. "Good afternoon, sir." Obinna smiled gently. "Don't be alarmed. I wanted to see this place with my own eyes, without all the noise that usually follows me." Adiz's heart raced. She didn't know what to say. No prince had ever stood by the village stream, let alone spoken so plainly. She lowered her gaze. "You honor our small village by coming." "I did not come to honor the village," Obina replied softly. I came to see you. Her breath caught. She stared at him, unsure if she heard correctly. Me? Yes, Adiz. His tone carried no doubt. From the moment I saw you at the festival, I knew there was something different. In the market, when our eyes met, it only grew stronger. I had to know you. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to compose herself. But I am no one, Your Highness. Just a farmer's daughter. Why would you seek me? Obina took a step closer, his eyes steady on hers. Because you are real. In a world where many hide behind wealth and status, you stand with honesty. Do you know how rare that is? You think you are no one, Adiz, but to me, you are someone. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the rushing stream. Adiz's heart swelled with emotion she couldn't name. Part of her wanted to believe him, yet another part feared the dangers of such attention. What would people say? What would his world do to someone like her? As if sensing her doubts, Obina's voice softened. I do not expect an answer now. I only ask that you allow me to come again, to know you better. Not as a prince, but as a man who admires you. Adiz lowered her eyes, her cheeks warm. I don't know what to say. Then say nothing, Obina replied kindly. Your silence is enough for today. He left her with those words, walking back the way he came, his guard following at a distance. Adiz remained by the stream, staring at the water as though it held the answers to the storm rising in her heart. That night, sleep refused to come easily. Her mother noticed her tossing and turning. Adiz, she asked softly, what troubles you, my child? Adiz hesitated. She could not tell her mother that a prince had sought her by the stream. It sounded like a dream too wild to share. So she only said, Mama, I feel as though life is about to change, but I don't know if I'm ready. Her mother stroked her hair gently. Life never asks if we are ready, Adiz. It only moves, and we must follow with courage. In the palace, Obina sat by his window again, his heart lighter than it had been in months. He had spoken to her, and she had not turned away. It was only the beginning, but beginnings were powerful. He knew challenges lay ahead, his family's expectations, society's whispers, the gap between their worlds. Yet he felt certain, he would walk this path. And in the quiet of the village night, Adiz whispered to herself, why me? Even as her heart already knew she would never forget the way he had looked at her by the stream. The next morning arrived slow and soft, the sky painted with pale gold that seeped gently over the roofs of the village. Adiz woke before dawn, stirred by the memory of Obina's voice by the stream. She lay for a long time in the quiet of her hut, thinking about what he had said. His words played in her mind like a song she could not stop humming. But there was also confusion. Was this real, or just the wishful dream of a girl who lived in simplicity? The air in the village carried the scent of fresh earth and morning firewood. Outside, children ran barefoot to fetch water, their laughter floating in the air like soft bells. Adiz moved quietly, trying to hide her restless thoughts. She dressed, wrapped her cloth carefully around her waist, and stepped outside, finding herself drawn to the stream where Obina had first spoken to her. The stream was calm in the morning light, reflecting soft clouds and the green of the trees. As she approached, she noticed small ripples across the water where fish darted away from her footsteps. She stood for a while, breathing deeply, trying to shake the strange pull in her heart. She heard footsteps approaching and froze. Obina stepped forward, his clothes simple, his face calm but his eyes full of purpose. Good morning, he said softly, as though speaking too loudly might shatter the moment. Adiz blinked, unsure if this was real. You came again, she said quietly, almost in disbelief. I promised I would, he said, smiling slightly. I could not stop thinking about yesterday. I needed to see you again. Adiz felt her heart quicken, but she said nothing. She kept her gaze fixed on the water, unsure how to meet his eyes. They stood beside each other in silence for a long moment. The sound of the stream, the chirping of early birds, and distant calls from the village were the only things between them. Then Obinna spoke again, his voice low and steady. "I have been thinking about you since I left. Not your face alone, but your spirit. You walk through life without pretension. That is rare." Adi's cheeks warmed, though she kept her eyes away. "You speak as though you know me well," she said softly. "Perhaps I do," Obinna replied, "or perhaps I wish to." There was something in the way he said it that made her heart flutter and tremble at once. She wanted to speak, to question, to deny, but no words came. Instead, she turned and walked along the stream, motioning for him to follow. As they walked, they spoke quietly. Obinna asked about her daily life, about her family, about her dreams. Adiz answered hesitantly at first, but his calm manner drew her out. She told him about the fields, about her mother's cooking, about the dreams she kept hidden. Dreams of seeing the world beyond her village, of a life that seemed impossible but still vivid in her mind. Obinna listened without interruption, as though every word was a thread he wanted to hold on to. When she spoke of her dreams, his gaze softened. "Dreams matter," he said. "They are the whispers of what our hearts truly want." Hours passed without them noticing. The village moved around them, but they were in their own quiet world. Eventually, Obinna rose to leave. "I must go," he said reluctantly, "but I will return." Adiz watched him walk away, her heart beating strangely. She did not know if she wanted him to come back or to leave. The days that followed were restless for both of them. In the village, Adiz found herself glancing toward the stream whenever her work allowed. Ngozi noticed her distraction and teased her again. "Adiz, you are in love with a prince. Admit it. How can you not be?" Adiz laughed softly but said nothing, her mind clouded with questions. In the palace, Obinna moved through his duties with quiet unrest. His advisors noticed his distraction, and his father frowned during their meetings. "You seem unsettled, Obinna," his father said one afternoon. "Is it the politics of the council?" "It is something else, father," Obinna said without elaborating. His thoughts were already back in that small village, by the stream, with Adiz. A week later, Obinna returned in secrecy, walking the narrow paths once more until he reached the stream. This time, Adiz was waiting. She had not known he would come. Her heart pounded when she saw him appear from the trees. "You came again," she said, almost in a whisper. "I promised," he replied simply. They sat by the water's edge, the silence between them thick but not uncomfortable. Then Obinna spoke of things that surprised her, of his own loneliness, of the pressures of his life, of the burden of expectations he carried as a prince. Adiz listened quietly, feeling the weight of his words. "You speak as if the world has caged you," she said softly. "In a way it has," he admitted. "But meeting you has been different. You make me feel like the world is worth seeing again." She looked at him, unsure if she should smile or look away. "But you must return to your world," she said quietly. "It is not mine." "I will return," he said, "but I want to see where this leads. Will you let me?" Adiz did not answer immediately. Her silence was her answer for now. They parted again that evening, but the meeting lingered between them. In the following days, villagers began to notice Prince Obinna's presence becoming more frequent in their quiet home. He moved with care, never disturbing, always watching her from a distance. The air between Adiz and Obinna became heavier with unspoken words. Each meeting was charged with an intensity neither could explain. Their connection grew silently, but with each passing moment, it deepened. One night, as Adiz lay under the thatched roof of her hut, she thought of Obinna's words, of his promise, and of her own hidden dreams. Somewhere deep in her heart, she began to sense that their story was no longer just a fleeting moment by the stream. It was becoming something far greater, something that could change both their lives forever. And far away, in the palace, Obinna stood again by his window, staring into the darkness, whispering her name into the quiet night. The days stretched on in a rhythm that felt both ordinary and strangely altered for Adiz. The sun rose and fell over the village, the women carried water in clay pots, The children ran barefoot across the dusty paths, and Adiz worked in her fields, but something in her had shifted. She was no longer simply a farmer's daughter. Her mind lingered constantly on the prince, on his words, on the quiet moments beside the stream. It felt as though her heart had opened without her permission. Ngozi noticed. One afternoon, as they worked together in the yam field, Ngozi spoke softly, her voice carrying a teasing edge. "You have been different these days, Adiz. You smile when no one speaks to you. You hum quietly when you work. Tell me, is it him?" Adiz's hands froze mid-motion. She brushed dirt from her palms without looking at her friend. "Ngozi, leave it. It's nothing." Ngozi didn't press further, though she watched Adiz with a knowing look. That evening, Adiz went to the stream again, not because she expected to see Obinna, but because she felt drawn there. The sky was painted in pale rose, and the air was sweet with the scent of fresh earth and flowers that grew along the bank. She sat quietly, letting the water lap at her feet. Obinna arrived without a sound, his steps gentle on the earth. She noticed him before he spoke. "You keep coming here," he said softly. Adiz did not look up. "It is peaceful here. It helps me think." He sat beside her. For a long time, neither spoke. The only sounds were the soft rush of water and the quiet hum of evening insects. Finally, Obinna broke the silence. "I cannot stop thinking about you, Adiz. I have no right, perhaps, but I do." She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why me? Why not someone from your world, someone who understands your life?" He shook his head. "Because no one has ever spoken to me the way you do. No one has looked at me without the weight of my title in mind. You see me as a man, not a prince. And I have never been seen like that." Her chest tightened, as if his words had slipped inside her and settled there. She looked away toward the water. "But our worlds are different," she said quietly. He took her hand, his touch light but certain. "Yes, but that doesn't mean they cannot meet. I want them to. I want to prove it." Adiz felt a rush of warmth at his words, but fear followed quickly. What would her family think? What would the villagers say if they knew she spent time with a prince? And what of the palace? What would his family say? That night, Adiz could not sleep. Her mind swirled with thoughts of him. She thought of his quiet determination, of the gentle way he spoke, of the sincerity she saw in his eyes. She thought of the longing she had begun to feel, though she could not name it clearly. The next morning, news came to the village. Rumors of the prince's frequent visits. Some elders whispered suspicion, others curiosity. But for Adiz, it became harder to hide the truth. Ngozi's laughter met her again one afternoon. "Adiz, you cannot hide it forever. He will not be a passing shadow in your life. The village talks, whether you want it or not." Adiz sighed, her eyes clouded with thought. "Ngozi, what if he leaves? What if I am left with nothing but a dream?" Ngozi looked at her quietly, saying nothing. Obinna did not wait for a formal invitation the next time. He came at dawn, his presence almost quiet as he approached the stream where Adiz worked. She was startled to see him, yet her heart welcomed him. "I could not wait," he said softly. She set aside her work, her hands trembling slightly. "Why do you keep coming here?" "Because I need to," he replied, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Because every moment I am away from you feels incomplete." They sat by the stream, the world around them fading. Obinna spoke of his childhood, of moments in the palace when he had felt caged by duty. He told her stories of laughter and loneliness, of lessons learned in silence. Adiz listened, captivated, feeling a bond growing between them. As the days passed, their meetings became a quiet certainty. They spoke of dreams, of fears, of hopes. Adiz began to trust him with her heart in ways she had never trusted another. And Obinna found in her a peace he had never known in the halls of the palace. One evening, as the sky turned deep orange and the world seemed to hold its breath, Obinna took her hand and looked into her eyes. "I know this is not simple," he said, "but I am ready to face everything for you. My family, my kingdom, my life, I will risk them all if you are willing." Adiz felt tears prick her eyes. She looked away, overwhelmed. "It is not just my heart you would risk," she said softly. "It is mine too." Obinna pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "Then let us risk it together." For the first time in her life, Adiz let herself believe in something extraordinary. She did not know what the future would hold, but in that moment, beside the stream with the man who had chosen her, she felt the quiet certainty that her life was about to change forever. But even as she gave herself to that moment, a shadow stirred in the distance, the whisper of challenges that neither of them had yet faced. The path ahead would not be easy, and somewhere deep in her heart, Adiz knew that the story of a farmer's daughter and a prince was only just beginning. The mornings in the village had begun to change. There was a strange tension woven into the usual rhythm of life, though no one spoke of it openly. Adiz felt it most keenly. She rose before the sun, her thoughts restless even before her feet touched the ground. Her dreams were filled with Obinna's voice, with his gentle hands, with the way he seemed to look at her as though she was something rare in the world. But with the warmth in her heart also came unease. She knew the life she had lived until now, the steady simplicity, the trust of the earth, the strength of her roots, would not survive unchanged. That day, she found herself waking earlier than usual, carrying her water pot silently to the stream. The air was cooler than normal, carrying a quiet she could not explain. As she arrived, she found Obinna already there, standing at the water's edge, looking out over the village rooftops. His robe caught the morning light, and he seemed almost carved from the quiet itself. Adiz stopped in her steps. He turned when he heard her, and his face broke into the kind of smile that made her forget to speak. "You came early," he said softly. "I could not sleep," she replied, stepping closer. "My thoughts, they have been restless." He nodded as though he understood exactly what she meant. The heart has its own unrest. It does not follow the clock or the season. They sat beside each other in silence, letting the sound of water and birds fill the space between them. Then Obinna took her hand gently. "Adiz, I have to speak to you. There are things I have not told you, things I have kept because I feared they might scare you away." Her heart beat faster, and she looked at him closely. "What is it?" He drew a deep breath. "My father knows about us. The palace is aware. They do not approve. They say this is a foolish thing, that a prince cannot give his heart to someone from outside. They say it would weaken the crown. They speak of duty, tradition, and the balance of power." Adiz's breath caught. She felt a rush of warmth mixed with fear. "What will you do?" she asked quietly. "I will fight," he said with certainty. "But I wanted you to know. If we are to walk this path, we must walk it knowing what stands before us." She squeezed his hand, unsure whether her strength would falter. "And if they do not stop you?" she asked softly. "They will try. But I will not give up on us." The weight of his words hung between them. They spoke little after that, letting their hearts speak through the quiet. But Adiz could not stop thinking of what he had said. That afternoon, as she worked in the fields, Ngozi watched her quietly. "Adiz," she said at last, "you walk as if you are carrying a storm in your chest. Tell me, what is happening?" Adiz looked at her friend, hesitant. "It is love," she said quietly. "And it is not a simple thing." Ngozi laughed softly, but there was concern in her voice. "Love is never simple. But when it burns so fiercely, it will demand you face everything." Weeks passed, and the tension in the village grew. Rumors of the prince's visits swirled like leaves in wind. Some elders whispered in warning, others in curiosity. Still, Adiz and Obinna continued their quiet meetings. One evening, they met under the soft light of a crescent moon. The air was cool, carrying the scent of earth and flowers. Obinna brought no words at first. They sat together by the stream, hands intertwined, letting the world fall away. Then he spoke. "Adiz, I want to take you to the palace. To show you who I am, to show my world. But it will not be an easy thing. You will face questions, doubts, and judgment. Are you ready for that? Her breath trembled as she considered his words. I do not know, she said. But I know I want to see it, with you. He smiled softly, relief touching his face. Then we will face it together. The next days were a whirlwind of preparations. Obinna moved quietly, arranging matters at the palace without drawing attention. Adiz told no one of what was to come, not her family, not Ngozi. She carried the secret in her heart like a flame, both terrifying and warm. When the day arrived, Obinna came at dawn. He was dressed simply, his expression both serious and gentle. Are you ready? He asked. Adiz nodded, her heart pounding. Yes. They walked together through the village, past familiar paths that now seemed strange to her. Children stopped to stare, women whispered quietly, elders looked on with suspicion. But Adiz did not look back. When they reached the edge of the village, Obinna turned to her. This is the crossing point, he said. Beyond here, nothing will be the same. She held his hand tighter, and they stepped forward together. The journey to the palace was unlike anything Adiz had imagined. The path wound through hills and forests, each step carrying her farther from the life she had always known. Her heart beat fast with both fear and anticipation. When they arrived, the gates of the palace rose before them like a story carved in stone. Guards stood silent, watching them pass. Adiz's breath caught as she stepped into a world she had never dreamed of, a world of vast halls, intricate carvings, and quiet whispers. Obinna led her through corridors lit by soft lanterns, into a chamber that overlooked the palace gardens. He turned to her then, his voice low. Welcome to my world, Adiz. She looked around, her eyes wide, her heart trembling. It is beautiful, she said softly. Yes, he said. But it is not my heart that makes it so. It is you. For a moment, the world seemed still. Then, from somewhere deep within the palace, a shadow stirred, a shadow that carried both danger and the promise of a challenge far greater than anything Adiz and Obinna had yet faced. The palace felt alive in a way Adiz could not have imagined. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and polished wood. Every corridor seemed to hum softly, as if the walls themselves held memories. She followed Obinna quietly, her heart pounding with awe and nerves. She felt like she was walking into another world, a place both beautiful and frightening. Obinna led her through the halls until they reached a balcony that overlooked the palace gardens. The moonlight poured over the flowers, casting them in silver light. The quiet was so deep that Adiz could hear her own breath. This place, she began, but her voice faltered. Obinna smiled gently. This is where I have spent most of my nights dreaming of something beyond these walls. And now, I want you to see it with me. She turned to him, her chest tight with a mix of wonder and fear. But what will your family say? They already speak, he admitted. The palace is filled with whispers, about us, about you. Some see this as impossible. Others see it as scandal. But I cannot turn away from this. I will face them all for you. Adiz looked at him, her eyes searching his. There was no hesitation in his gaze, only certainty. And in that certainty, her heart trembled. The days that followed were unlike any she had known. Adiz became a guest in a world of silk and marble, of quiet ceremonies and hushed conversations. She learned quickly that the palace was not just a home, it was a living thing, with its own rules, its own politics, and its own dangers. The first time she met the king, Obinna's father, was in a grand hall filled with golden light. The king was tall, his face marked by years of command. His eyes studied her sharply. Adiz felt her knees weaken, but she held her head high. Prince Obinna speaks often of you, the king said, his voice deep. And yet, you come here without my invitation. Tell me, why should I believe in what he believes? Adiz swallowed her fear. Because I see the truth in him. I see a man who is willing to stand against everything for what he believes is right. And I believe in him too." There was silence. Then the king nodded slowly, as though weighing her words. "You speak with courage. But courage alone will not protect you." Obinna stepped forward. "Father, we have chosen this path together. I will face whatever comes, but I will not walk it without her." The hall grew still. The weight of their words settled into the air. In the days that followed, whispers in the palace grew louder. Some courtiers looked at Adiz with disdain, others with curiosity. Adiz could feel the eyes upon her at every turn. She knew she had entered a world where nothing came without a cost. Obinna never left her side. He introduced her to the gardens, taught her about the palace customs, and spoke of his dreams for a future where their worlds could meet. But beneath his words was an unspoken truth. They were walking a dangerous path. One evening, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Adiz confronted him. "Obinna, do you know what they are saying about us?" He took her hand, his voice steady. "I do. But let them speak. I would rather live in truth with you than in silence without you." Her heart ached with both love and fear. "But what if they force you to choose?" He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "Then I choose you. Always." The weeks turned into months, and Adiz found herself woven deeper into the life of the palace. She learned to walk with grace, to speak with care, and to hold her own in the face of suspicion. But the more she became part of Obinna's world, the more she felt the pull of her own roots, the village she came from, the life she had left behind. One night, as they stood together on the balcony, looking out over the quiet gardens, Adiz spoke softly. "Obinna, do you ever wonder if this love of ours can survive everything?" He turned to her, his face calm but serious. "Every day. But I believe it can. Because it is not just love. It is a choice. And I choose you, now and forever." Her breath caught at his words. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe completely. But even as her heart opened, she knew there would be trials ahead. The palace was a place of power, and power demanded sacrifice. The days that followed brought both joy and challenge. The king summoned them, asking Obinna to prove that his choice was not born of folly but of purpose. Obinna accepted without hesitation, presenting a vision of a future where their union would bring strength, not weakness. Adiz stood by him as he spoke, her voice joining his when he asked for her blessing in front of the court. The hall was silent as her words echoed between stone walls, carrying a promise that she did not yet fully understand. But beyond the walls of the palace, in the quiet corners of her heart, Adiz knew something powerful had begun. This was no longer just a story of a prince and a village girl. It was the story of two worlds colliding, of love that refused to bow to fear, and of a future that neither of them could yet see clearly. And in that moment, under the watchful glow of the palace lights, they held each other tightly, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. Thank you for joining us on this journey of love, courage, and sacrifice. Adiz and Obinna's story reminds us that true love is not just about dreams, it's about choice, strength, and standing together no matter the odds. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next tale we bring to life. We'd also love to hear from you. Tell us which country you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. Your voice matters to us, and it makes this journey even more special.